Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, and today we're talking about power-up sets. Back a while ago, I made deck techs for both Haruhi and Log Horizon, but with the new power-up sets that just came out, both of those decks got massive shots in the arm, and I want to talk about what kind of updates the power-up sets bring to those decks. Neither of these are competitively viable, both of them are still a little bit expensive because of how much the older cards are, but if you are already in these sets, or if you're thinking about picking them up, or if you want to proxy them out, this video will talk about both of them. As we get started, you will doubtlessly notice that I have basically stolen the deck tech format from Tressa's Collectibles, so apologies to those guys. They're making some of the best Weiss Schwarz stuff right now. All their deck profiles are excellent and you should watch them. Their format was better than mine, so I have shamelessly stolen it. Let's get into Log Horizon. Log Horizon has that top end that combines the back row anti-damage and the level 3 burn combo with the salvage trigger. And that's always actually been kind of fine. The back row Shiro is, frankly, one of the most broken cards in English Weiss to this day. But it never had much of a mid-game. The mid-game was just bad, and it didn't have a couple of key zero profiles, nowhere near enough mill. It was a hard deck to play and get any kind of consistency out of. The power-up set offers some consistency and gives it some key profiles that it just did not have before, so we're going to talk about those. At level 0, we just want to power over the board. We have just enough mill and just enough fix to get our level 1 combo into hand and hopefully get to a real refresh point, not having to wait till level 2 to get to our second deck, ideally getting to our second deck while we're still at level 1 so we can get some clock compression. In the mid-game, the level 1 combo is on pants and actually has some decent size. We can also get rid of some stuff that our opponents have with some removal options, new and old. The level 3 game basically hasn't changed, but it offers a little bit of tech that helps us actually get there. While the power-up sets themselves are usually in like the $50 to $60 range, depending on where you get them, the power-up sets are not themselves playable on their own. If you want to play this and you own none of the pieces, you're going to have to dig around for those level 3 pieces in particular, as well as a couple of other expensive pieces from the older set. So it's not a cheap deck to build. You have to be pretty committed to actually build this if you don't already own the pieces. But if you do, or if you just want to proxy it up because proxying is good, then this is for you. Let's get into it. We'll start at level 0. One of the new cards is the Minori Brainstormer. At the beginning of the climax phase, give something 500, and it's just a 4-card search brainstorm. We have a good brainstormer in the set now. We have it. We can brainstorm and hit, and it even has a nice little extra 500 power that we can give to something. That is excellent. That is perfectly serviceable for a very old set. It offers us the mill that we were desperately in need of. We run the set 4 of because, again, we need that mill. We need to hit this. This is one of our best search pieces as well. A massively necessary profile that this deck sorely needed. Next is Beach Angel Marielle. It's a level 0 from the old set. It's an expensive double R, which feels really weird considering that it's not that good of a profile. On play, you may mill 3 just to mill, which this deck needs, so we do it. It has a second ability where you mill only 1 card. If it's a CX, this card goes to stock. That can be a blessing or a curse, and there's no way to top check, so you're rolling the dice a little bit every time you play the Marielle. However, it also gives a 500 global assist to everything else on your board. This is a fine card to put down at 0 just to get some mill and a little bit of extra power. The 0 lineup is either very powerful or not at all, so that extra 5 can actually help us quite a bit. One of the other key power pieces at 0 is the CX Ditch Isuzu. Everything's magic or weapon in this, so you can get anything you want. Also, when this card direct attacks, choose a character and it gets 1500. That's quite useful at 0 because, as you've doubtlessly noticed, we run a lot of 500 and 1000 power characters at 0. So if we want to actually win board at 0, we need some help, and this can offer us that assistance. If we're playing into something with a runner, this is not very good anymore all of a sudden because it has to direct attack to give the power, but dropping it on turn 1, ditching an extra CX that maybe we got off the draw, or an extra CX we got off of the pants trigger, giving power to the Marielle that we stuffed in the front row, or one of the other more board-heavy power pieces that we're going to be working with, can help us get over some of the big numbers in the current meta. The Drop Searcher is an old one. Everything else with Rundle House in its name gets 500 power. We don't run any Rundle House. It's literally just a Drop Searcher on a stick, 500 power. That's all it does. Next, we have 2 different plussing zeros. The Sojiro during your opponent's turn. If your opponent has 3 or fewer characters, this gains 2000 power. So it sits at 4-5 on defense, potentially 5, depending on what's on the board. So can definitely get way bigger than most zeros. It can be bombed away, of course, but in a world where you're going to run into a lot of 3, 5s, and 4s at 0. We also have 2 copies of Samurai Toya. It is a 2-5 chaser. It moves to an open position of your stage with a character facing it at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase. Toya will often sit at 3 because of the Marielle on board as well, but honestly, choose between these 2 profiles however you want. I have a 2-2 split more as just like an example than anything else. Based on your locals meta, because that's where you're probably going to be playing this the most, just pick whatever makes the most sense. If you've got, a format that has a lot of bombs in it, maybe you run the Toya over the Sojiro. If it's just power that you're trying to get over and Toya's not big enough, maybe you lean more into the Sojiro. I like running 4+ing zeros. I think that just makes a lot of sense. And you have a couple of potentially playable profiles here, so I would just play around with these and see which one you like best. Next, William, Massachusetts. It's on Pants. It's our level 1 combo because we have a real level 1 combo. I have no idea why he was chosen for the combo, but we'll take what we can get. 500 for each other weapon or magic character, so it'll sit at 6, and again, potentially more if you have the Marielle down. It swings in at 7, 7, 5, 8, with CX down depending on the board state. On attack, if Pants is in Climax area, reveal the top card. If it's a weapon or magic character, add it. So not a guaranteed plus, but if you reveal a Climax, you're going to plus off the trigger anyway, so you know how many cards you're going to have in hand at the end of your turn. This is not very good, but it's fine, and it's on attack, not on reverse, so sure. We run this because it's the best available option and is on a plussing trigger. Next, the Nyanta JC. This is a card from the old set that we continue to run. It is a classic JC profile. Pay 1, sack this when another character is attacked to bring it back to hand. Makes it easy to loop the Pants combo. Brings back something else into our hand if we're short on hand. We can also tap 2 of our magic characters to give something a free side attack, which is a super useful ability, especially in a world with a lot of anti-damage counters. So he offers that to us as well. A classically good profile that's probably a little outmoded in 2023, but again, we don't have a whole lot to work with, so this is what we have. Next, I do run a couple copies of Embarrassed Akatsuki. It just sits at 6 as long as you have 3 or more others on board. It's big enough to win lanes, pretty easy to power over stuff that's maybe even a little bit bigger. We only have 2 colors, so running red at level 1 doesn't feel bad at all. This is a card that you can definitely run less of if you want to lean into some other piece, but I like it. I think that just having that little bit of extra, muscle at level 1 is quite helpful. We also run the Isuzu Bomb. It's a level 1 bomb, that's all it does, but with so many 1/1 targets running around for standby decks and such, it's useful in enough matchups, and it's also 3/5, so it's not like super tiny. Again, we're grasping at straws a little bit here, but this is definitely a usable profile in certain matchups. Moving into level 2, another one of the new cards, the Tetra Early Play Bomb. It just reverses things, it doesn't actually send it to another zone. Probably the more important ability is that when it gets a reverse, you can salvage ditch, help fix for level 3, so it's a 1 soul that can get rid of a big thing and also fix for the endgame. Next, the Akatsuki free refresh counter. It's pay 3 refresh. That simple. If we are way out on climaxes, if we triggered a couple of Pants or a couple of salvages, and we're suddenly in a really bad spot, this takes care of that. It's also a 2/5 backup we can use to keep our level 3 combo on board. Another new card is Shadow Lurk Akatsuki. It comes down early if you have 2 or fewer climaxes, but we're not worried about its early play condition. It doesn't heal or anything. It gains 1500 if you have 3 or more other weapon or magic characters, just like the other Akatsuki, but more importantly, on play, look it up to X, add 1. This digs for salvage climax. If we don't hit the Pants, if we don't draw into the salvage, this can get us there. That's what this is here for, is to dig for either a combo piece or a level 3 climax so that we can actually pop off and try to win the game. Next, that Broken Shiro back row card. Can't take damage from opponents' auto effects, and it's also a 3000 frontal assist. When we get a reverse, we can tap this and pay 1 to give the character that we just got the reverse with Neg Soul cross turn, -2 soul. So in a perfect world, we have 2 of the Shiro in the back row and at least 2 of this Akatsuki in the front row. It can't side attack, it heals on play, it has a change package that's way too expensive so we don't play it. On attack, it gains 4000 power, and on reverse, burn 1. It's gonna get the reverses because it's gonna swing in at 18,000 power when it combos and has the Shiro behind it. And when it gets those reverses, we can then give it Neg Soul cross turn so our opponents can't swing back at us. So hopefully what we do is, because we have the Shiro in the back row and the Akatsuki in the front row with the Neg Soul, we just don't eat damage. No burn damage. Everything has -2 soul on it. So if we can do that, and also we just heal down to 3-0 hopefully with the Akatsuki, we live for another turn and we get to try again to close on the next turn. This is not a good closing top end, not going to pretend that it is, but if we can poke our opponent into the middle of level 3 with the original combo and then not die, even if our opponent heals down into early level 3, we have a chance to close with burn 1s, because Akatsuki will still be 13 on defense, which is hard to power over. If we can, we can back it up to 15-5. The one in the middle is going to sit at 16 if we have 2 Shiros in the back row. So pretty doable, I think. It's a strategy, right? Like, this deck actually has a plan. It has something it wants to do. It's not just throwing cards on the floor and hoping things work. There is another profile that I see a lot of people running in the Log Horizon stuff, and that is the Naotsuguu with great performance. I get why. It makes sense. You can put it in the middle in front of those 2 Shiros, and it gets very big, and your opponents have to crash into it. And it's extremely difficult to scale all of that power, so your opponents do just kind of have to crash. I could see teching in it as a one-of maybe for specific matchups, but overall I just don't think it does enough for us. Akatsuki sits almost as big and can also have the Neg Soul. I would rather spend that stock on making sure that we got a second copy of the Akatsuki down so that we can get the burn. I don't think the card helps us as much as it reads. It's still good. I understand why people would play it, but personally, I would rather just lean into the Akatsukis and the Shiros rather than trying to get this down as well. Is this a high-powered deck? Not by any means, but it does have a plan, and it is viable in like a Legacy or Bad Deck Day kind of format. I think this is fun. I like the IP, and I think that this is more playable than people have given it credit for over the years because of this top end, and now it has the other pieces, so the early and mid games feel a lot less bad. It's a fun deck. It's a playable deck. If you have the pieces already and you are thinking about picking up the power-up set, it's a pretty small investment to upgrade the deck to something that's a lot more playable, and you also get, the deck box and, the other stuff that comes with that. So let's move on to talk about Haruhi Suzumiya. This deck is one of my favorites. It was the first set that I built when I started playing Weiss. It was the first deck that I built for the channel, and now here we are several years later, still talking about Haruhi because of the power-up sets. I'm so excited that this came out, even though the set and the deck are not particularly viable. Still some of my favorite stuff, and I'm very excited to be able to build this and play it. Our level 0 game here is very different from Log Horizon. We don't really have any power pieces. We're not trying to get over a lot of stuff. We have a little bit, but mostly the plan is to try to mill and plus at 0 as much as we can. We have some pieces that can plus us in different ways than winning board, and we also have a lot more mill than we used to, so we can actually get to a real refresh point, a lot like Log Horizon in that way. The mid game has a couple different ways we can plus. We have the Time Machine comboless Haruhis that plus, and we also have the combo on Stock Soul. We'll get into detail about those more in a bit. And for the entirety of the mid game, we're just trying to combo / loop the Time Machines as much as we can, get as much plussing off of them as we can, save hand, save stock so that we can pop off with our end game, which is built around 2 different combos that both combo with the old salvage. One is from the old stuff, one is from the new power-up set, as well as a key anti-climax card in green that keeps our opponents from comboing off and hopefully gives us a 2-turn endgame. So let's get into it, starting at level 0. The most important new card in the set, Taking a Break Haruhi. It is a Brainstormer. We did not have a plussing Brainstormer until now. Now we do. This is the thing that the set needed the most, and it has it now. A tap salvage Brainstormer that can get brigade leaders and SOS brigade characters. It also gives the middle of our front row 500 power, which helps us get our power conditions for our level 1 game. In the modern game, this is a perfectly fine Brainstormer. In the context of Haruhi, it is an oasis in a desert. We needed this mill, we needed this potential plus. We run it as a 4-of because honestly, having 2 of these down in our back row doesn't feel bad at all. Love this card. It's a game changer for Haruhi. It makes it so much better. Next, we have a couple of green cards. One from the new set, Taking a Break Mikuru. On play or on return from memory, mill 2. When it gets a reverse, it goes to memory, and it comes back at the beginning of our next draw phase. So standard Time Machine profile with a little bit of extra mill on it. It also fixes us for a little bit more green as well. We need just enough green to be able to play the level 3 So this mills, it pluses, and it fixes for green. Extremely useful profile for us. We run it as a 2 of. Next, an old Mikuru card, SOS Brigade's mascot. When another SOS Brigade character, which is almost everyone, comes on board from hand or memory, that character gets 1,000 till the end of turn, and also T, which is great. This card is not an SOS Brigade trait, which is an abomination, frankly, and this is the issue that Haruhi has had more than anything else, is that its traits have always been abysmal. The power-up set mostly fixes that, but a couple of key cards, including this one, don't have the trait, so we have to just draw into this or salvage into it, which doesn't feel great. It's not a key profile, but it's super useful to have in the back row because it just gives 1,000 power to our looping time machines. So we like to have this if we can have it. It gives 1,000 power to almost everything that matters, so useful. Again, more green fix, but we're not necessarily super pressed if we can't get to this. Next, a couple more cards from the old set. Prim and Proper Haruhi is a clean cut. It swings in at 2. When it gets a reverse, you can save another character to the back row. It pairs really well with this level 0 bomb. When it becomes reversed, it reverses any level 0s across from it. It also gives 1,500 power to something else, an SOS Brigade character specifically, when it gets reversed. So a pretty easy play to make is you crash this into whatever big thing is on your opponent's board, give 1,500 power to the clean cut gets over, and then saves the bomb to the back row. Pretty simple plussing engine. We used to lean into it a lot more back when we didn't have very good level 0 plussing, but now we have better cards at 0. So we can lean into this a little bit less. I currently have it as a 2-2 split, although that is definitely up for debate. Next, another crucial profile from the power-up set, the Nagato Riki. On play, pay 1, clock the top card of deck, search for a level 1 or lower character, so it goes to get our time machines. Any level 0 card that we need, including the Mikuru, regardless of trait, and the level 1 combo as well. Also, on attack, choose an SOS Brigade character and it gets 1,000 power. Helps us get overboard at 0 and also at 1. Can actually just get us a combo piece or a time machine and then pump it an extra 1,000 power, which is super helpful. We also run 1 copy of the Kyon and Koizumi Stock Bomb. There's enough stuff that procs just when it goes to waiting room now, so that it's useful to have this. Also, it's a little bit of yellow fix in case we want to play one of the yellow level 3s from hand, but that's not really the goal for those. So, not super worried about this. You can easily cut this if you don't like it. It is also SOS Brigade. Now let's get into the level 1 stuff. The brand new Stock Soul combo, Outrageous Behavior Haruhi, gains 1,500 when you play it. When it gets a reverse, you can choose a level 0 or lower character in your opponent's front row and put it into their waiting room, and then choose a Brigade Leader or SOS Brigade character in waiting room and return it to hand. We're basically never going to use that first ability. There are a couple of niche circumstances where that might be useful, but not many. We don't really care too much about that. It is also more or less optional. The more important thing is that it's salvage. Stock Soul does give us extra stock, I guess. There's not a lot to love about this. It is on reverse. It's not even very big. But if we go to level 1 first, which we can do much more easily now that we have the good Riki profile, it makes this work a lot better. The other key profile at level 1 is usual Haruhi. This is my favorite card in all of Weiss. When it gets a reverse, it goes to memory and then comes back at the beginning of our draw phase. It's a free +1. It gives up the open board, which both denies on reverse combos but also opens us up for bigger swings. But comboless plussing is so good. We want to keep doing this over and over and over again. We don't mind falling behind in damage because we feel like we have a level 3 game that can sufficiently slow the game down. So eating damage in the mid game doesn't really hurt us that much. Overall, I still think this card is great. I still think, free plussing on a 1 is good, even if it does come with some drawbacks. It's searchable, it gets power from all of our power pumps. It is the rock star of the deck. Before, when we were running the 2 soul yellow 1/1 combo, this card couldn't shine as much because we had to lean more into the yellow, but now that we're kind of off yellow, this really can just shine as a 4 of and one of the key cards that makes the deck work. Next, a card I didn't think I was ever going to run again, but here it is. Anyway, Super Editor-in-Chief Haruhi and the Assistants. It's an old PR from the old sets. Modular back row piece, we can tap and pay 2 to salvage any character from our waiting room. We can also just tap and give 1,000 power to an SOS Brigade character, and we can pay 2, tap this to deal 1 damage. Pay 2 to salvage, pay 2 to deal 1, those aren't amazing rate, but in a deck like this where we actually usually have excess stock, it doesn't hurt so bad. It also goes to get our Mikuru, which is crucial. It just gets it on command. It also gives us power, which we need, and it can also push an extra little bit of damage at the top if we have the extra stock to do so. I can't get away from this. I like this profile more than I probably should. It's here as a 1-of. I could definitely see it going up to 2 if it proves useful enough in more playtesting. Next, the 2-1 Nagato and Koizumi backup. 2-5 backup. When we use it, we can ditch a card to shuffle 2 cards back into our opponent's deck. Useful in a couple of positions. One, we can gamble and try to shuffle back climaxes if they're early in their turn with only a couple cards left in deck, and try to get them to trigger those out so that they're not in the next deck. We can also get them to trigger blanks if we're trying to keep them from swinging big damage at us, or we can simply shuffle back clean damage for us to swing into next turn. In any case, it's at least interesting. It isn't super well traded, so we have to get it either off like a salvage trigger or one of our specific techs that goes to get the off-trait pieces, but it is useful enough to run as a 1-of, even though we aren't really worried about playing the power game on defense. Next, the Fated World event, the infamous Fated World event that was banned in JP. You can choose a level 1 or lower character on your board, sack it. If you do, choose a 0 brigade leader in your waiting room and put it on board, and then salvage any 2 characters you like. Essentially, it's pay 1, pitch 1, sack 1, because you're ditching the event to use it, to fix for 2 in hand and then summon a 0 to board. This is very useful for getting the Mikuru level 3 that is again off trait, but other than that, it's not amazing anymore. It was a lot better, I think, back in its heyday, but it does allow you to just go get the Mikuru, which is really nice. It does whiff the level 3 combo, however, so we want to keep this at a minimum, so we'll choose to run it as a 1-of. Next, the producer for Mikuru Haruhi is a 2k level 3 assist. Also, we can ditch one to salvage a brigade leader or SOS brigade character. This is an emergency fix more than it is a power pump. For us, it is a PR from the power-up set, much like Fated World. We run it as a 1-of in case we really need the power for some reason, but our level 3 game doesn't really care that much about power, so we aren't super worried about it, but it's here in case we're in a matchup where we desperately need to get overboard for some reason. Alright, now for the level 3 stuff. This is where it gets really fun. These are the payoff cards for playing this set. Cat Ears Mikuru, it is off trait, so we can't search for it. That's why we have all those other pieces to help us get into it. It has -1 neg soul to the character across from it, but more importantly, when we play it, we pay 1, and our opponent can't play climaxes next turn. That ability goes on our opponent, not this card, so even if this card is cleared from board, the ability still sticks around. Our opponent can't do anything about it. If we get to level 3 first, we slam this down, our opponent can't do anything about it. Our opponent just doesn't combo after we push them into 3. They can't push damage by slamming a CX, and this has an egg soul on it. We are almost certainly going to live if we are early in level 3 and we play this down. Extremely broken profile. There's a reason they've never printed it again, and there's a reason why we do so much to go out of our way to play this card, even though it is so off trait. So that's how we stop our opponents from winning the game. How do we win the game? Well, 10th Anniversary Haruhi is here to help. On play, salvage a brigade leader or SOS brigade character, so we can just go get a second copy or anything else that we want. Combos with the old salvage and gives itself the ability that when it attacks, we can sacrifice another character from board. Top check, if that character is a level 1 or higher brigade leader or SOS brigade character, we can put it on the stage, and that character gets 1,000 power till the end of turn. This is why we only run 15 zeros. This is why we only run 1 copy of Fated World. We try to lean into as many hits for this as we can, because whenever we reveal a level 1 or higher, we get to summon it to board directly. The other card that combos with this is Trouble Girl Haruhi. This is the classic on-play heal and on-attack burn 1. It has a change package that's way too expensive, so we don't use it. In a perfect world, we have played the Mikuru the turn before, we kept our opponent from closing us out, and now we have a chance to close them while they're at level 3. We have 2 of the 10th Anniversary combos. We have 1 of the Trouble Girls. We swing with Trouble Girl first and burn 1. Then sacrifice the Trouble Girl with the 10th Anniversary Haruhi's ability. And reveal off the top. And hopefully we reveal something good. Any level 1 will immediately stand and become another swing for us. Another Trouble Girl becomes another burn 1. Or we can reveal this. Santa Girl Haruhi and Kyon is a 3/2 10k. It has the ability that when it gets a reverse, we can pay 5 and restand it. Also, when it is frontal attacked, we can look at the top card of our deck and either put it on top or into waiting room. So we have a defensive surveil to prevent damage. The on-reverse ability cannot proc if it's summoned to a lane where something else has already been reversed. So there are universes in which we can crash with something and then maybe summon this into that spot and then beat over it and then pay the 5 and get a restand. That's kind of niche. It's possible, but it's pretty niche. This is really more important as just a 2-soul beater that has a good defensive ability, and also we have just enough yellow that we can, in theory, play this from hand if we have the stock to then pay the 5 after it gets its reverse to restand it. So it gives us some options. It's a good target to summon. We play it as a 4 of mostly because we want it to be a target. We want to give ourselves good targets to peel off the top of the deck, as well as giving us enough yellow in the deck that we can theoretically play this from hand if the opportunity presents itself. It's not really the main game plan, but we can do that. This piece is a weird one. There are some niche uses where we can really get a ton of advantage out of it, but mostly it's just a good body to summon to board because it's a 2-soul that has a good defensive ability. There are a couple of things that you can do a little differently. There is the level 2 information binding event. It's a 2-0 counter event that removes a climax from your opponent's board. A couple of reasons we don't play this. One is that it is a blue event. We don't run blue, and we don't really want events because 1, they're not searchable, and 2, they whiff on combo, so we want to keep events to a minimum as much as possible. And also, it's just not as good as the Mikuru. Frankly, I would rather pay the extra stock for the Mikuru effect because it denies combo entirely. At least if your opponent slams a CX, they still get the extra power and soul, and they still potentially get to combo if their combo happens at the start of attack phase, or if it's on attack in the first lane. Your opponent will still get to do a lot of their combo. It doesn't deny nearly as much as the Mikuru does. I think the Mikuru is worth it. Speaking of Mikuru, there is also an early play healer in the power-up set that people are playing. I understand why. Personally, I would rather just play heavily into the stuff that can try to do more damage at the top. It does hit on the combo because it is SOS Brigade. It's also potential green fix, and some games will have the stock for it. It can't be backed up, which does require that your opponent gets over it, but it is an easy number to get over. At the absolute most, we can pump this up to like 10 or 10-5 on defense, so it's pretty easy to clear if your opponent has any good early plays. It's not a bad card by any means, but I personally don't run it. I think we have better options at level 3. Hopefully we're summoning stuff off the top of the deck. We don't have a way to top check, we don't have a way to fix. There's nothing we can do to guarantee that this is going to work, but when it does, it feels amazing. When it whiffs, it just whiffs hard and we don't win the game. We're here to have a good time, not necessarily to win a lot of games. I think this combo is super fun. I think this top end is super fun. We're running a bunch of level 3s that could potentially be hits for the combo, even though, again, the Mikuru is not because it doesn't have the right traits. We're hoping, we're going to do everything that we can to get zeros into our level zone or just out of the deck as much as possible so that we have as many hits as possible so we can get at least one of those 10th anniversary Haruhi combos to pop off. This deck is super fun. It's chaotic and strange, a lot like the show itself. I do recommend you pick it up, especially if you already have the Haruhi stuff and you're wondering if the upgrade is worth it. It is. It makes the deck so much more fun to play and so much easier to pilot. Some expensive pieces here. The usual Haruhis are expensive. The deck really does need those. You can get away without the Hot Springs Haruhi, which is the other kind of expensive older card. You can get away without that, but you really need usual Haruhi and you really need Cat Air's Mikuru, which are kind of bouncing back and forth in price. So if you do some digging, you can find a good price on these sometimes, but depending on the market, you may not be able to. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for this. It's been super fun to revisit these decks in the past few months. I now have them sleeved up and ready to go. They're fun to play. I really enjoy them, and I'm really glad that we got the power-up sets, even if they're not going to be at all relevant in the context of the meta. We'll have some gameplay featuring these decks on Thursday, next Tuesday a Clock Talk, the following Thursday, 5 cards, 5 minutes, and in 2 weeks, Brandon will have a new deck tech. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.